Afternoon, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for the 9th session of the WEPs Deep Dive series of 2024. My name is Maja Löfström, and I'm a program analyst at the Women's Empowerment Principles, also called WEPs, the Global Secretariat at UN Women. So in today's session, we are going to focus on how the private sector can tackle violence against women and girls. So violence against women remains the most pervasive human rights violation worldwide, and addressing this issue is critical to advancing gender equality. And the statistics are alarming. Every 10 minutes, a woman is killed by an intimate partner or family member. And 1 in 3 women globally experience gender-based violence within their lifetime. Gender-based violence is a significant barrier to equality, safety, and economic independence. And globally, gender equality remains an unfinished goal. Women continue to face barriers in education, healthcare, economic independence, and leadership. And only 15% of the UN Sustainable Development Goal, SDG number 5 indicators, are on track to meet the 2030 targets. And at the current pace, it will take us nearly 300 years to achieve full equality. And violence is often perceived as a personal issue, but it is not. It has a strong connection to the workplace, affecting absenteeism, productivity, employee turnover. And victims of violence often struggle to focus at work due to stress and trauma, leading to potential losses in revenue and overall business stability. The private sector has a key role to play here in both preventing violence and supporting survivors. In this session, we will highlight the practical examples from businesses implementing the WEPs, specifically on Principle 3, emphasizing health, safety, and well-being of all workers. So by addressing these challenges head-on, the private sector has the power to be a transformative force for gender equality, and together we can explore solutions, share lessons, and also identify ways to accelerate progress. So now let me go over today's agenda. We will begin with the opening remarks from Adriana Quinones, Head of Human Rights and Development at UN Women, as well as Vera Rios, Communication and Stakeholder Engagement Consultant at UN Women. Then we will hear from today's distinguished speakers, Lisa Felton, Director of the Vodafone Foundation, Nodar Andguladze, Development Manager of the Georgian Rugby Union, and Alexandre Bourgaut, Chief Digital Officer at Pomellato. And after these presentations, we will proceed to a roundtable discussion and also a Q&A session where we'll dive deeper into these topics. But before we proceed, we have a few logistical details. You can submit your questions to the speakers in the Q&A function via the bottom of your screen at any time during the webinar. And if you'd like to communicate with the other participants or also to introduce yourselves, you can feel free to use the chat function. This webinar is also being recorded and it will be available after at weps.org. When the webinar concludes, we have a short evaluation survey. This will pop up automatically, and we would really appreciate it if you take a moment to complete it so that we can use it to improve our future content. We will also have 2 polls in this webinar because we want to get to know you a little bit better. So the first poll I will actually launch right now to gauge your familiarity with the WEPs. So I hope that you can see this poll. How familiar are you with the Women's Empowerment Principles? And here you have 3 different options. Very familiar, my company is a WEP signatory. Somewhat familiar, I'm still learning. Or not familiar, this is all new to me. Okay. We'll now end the poll and also share the results with you. So I hope that you can see. So we have a full 40% that is actually very familiar with the WEPs, and that's great. And somewhat familiar, still learning. We have a few as well. And not familiar, this is new to me. We have a 26%. So this is super interesting for us to know and for you to get to know the room as well. And there's a lot to learn from our speakers today, so this is great. So now I'd like to officially start today's session by inviting Adriana Quinones and Vera Rios to deliver the opening remarks. And Adriana is the head of the Human Rights and Development and Deputy Head of UN Women Geneva office. Adriana leads UN Women's work at the Human Rights Council and high-level initiatives on trade, labor, climate, and development. She has over 20 years of experience, and she had held a lot of senior roles at UNIFEM and UN Women, including country representative and manager of the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women. And then we have Vera Rios. She is the Communications and Stakeholder Engagement Consultant at UN Women Geneva office. Vera is the communications expert, and she has over 10 years of experience in international relations and communications. And she's also supported key advocacy campaigns, including the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence and International Women's Day as well. So, Adriana, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maya, and it's great to be here. What an important discussion that you are leading today. And I also started with our colleague Anna Foth, also leading WEPs. We started this campaign in Guatemala, where there was no WEPs work, and now we have seen so much progress over the years and so much engagement from the private sector. So to me, this opportunity is golden to really think and partner with the private sector on how to end violence against women. So this is a very important discussion for us, but also wanting to thank our partners in the private sector for your dedication and collaboration in making this event possible. The private sector for us holds an immense potential to drive change, and championing preventive measures, as well as fostering a safe environment, both in the workplace and beyond, contributes to build and create a world free from violence against women and girls. We will hear from Vera now on our latest data, and I know you will be shocked to hear and compelled to act to end violence against women and girls. Vera, please.
Thank you, Adriana. So I will share the latest data that were actually unveiled yesterday on the occasion of the International Day to End Violence Against Women, thanks to a joint report by UN Women and UNODC. This Unite campaign, UN Women, draws attention to the alarming escalation of violence against women and girls, with a special focus on femicide. As Maya mentioned earlier, a woman intentionally was killed every 10 minutes in 2023, which means that globally, 51,100 women were killed by partners or family members in 2023. As you may already know, femicide is defined as the intentional killing of women or girls because of their gender. And this is a universal problem. Unfortunately, no country is free from femicide, and it is the ultimate form of violence in the cycle of violence against women. As also Maya highlighted earlier, violence against women and girls results in considerable costs, eroding societal structures and economic stability. It undermines women's overall well-being. It limits their ability to fully engage in societal activities and imposes significant repercussions on families and communities. It ranges from increased healthcare burdens to legal expenditures and diminished productivity. Therefore, gender equality and safe working environments are very important, and they are intrinsically linked, because the workplace offers a critical space to challenge and transform harmful social norms, behaviors, and stereotypes that perpetuate gender inequality and may result in gender-based violence. Evidence shows that globally, women are disproportionately affected by workplace sexual violence and harassment. According to the ILO survey that was published in 2022, 82% of women experience workplace violence or harassment, compared to 5% of men, with young and migrant women being disproportionately affected by it. So after this data, I will pass the floor to Adriana, who will explain to us what we can do about preventing gender-based violence. Adriana, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that the statistics really are worrisome. We're seeing that women have no safety at home, many times no safety at work. And this is happening everywhere at different times in women's lives. But here's the good news, that gender-based violence is preventable. So what can we do? First of all, policies to combat workplace harassment, giving that signal that your companies are places where violence will not be tolerated is number one. Employers must ensure comprehensive support for survivors while fostering a zero-tolerance culture. And we have seen how this impacts the personal lives of workers, of women, creates a sense of safety and support, where more information, more relationship with the services that they can benefit from will become available. And we are creating that culture where women feel protected and safe. Engaging collaborative initiatives in programs like the Caring Foundation's 1 in 3 Women that exemplify how networks can share resources and best practices to combat workplace violence, create safe workplaces through collaboration. Research and data collection on gender-based violence are essential for prevention, response, and advocacy efforts, but also empowering workers by building capacities. For example, the Accor Hotel Group, a co-leader of Generation Equality Gender-Based Violence Coalition, runs an e-learning program that is mandatory for managers to combat sexism, sexual harassment, and domestic violence. So it's in the framework of the 16 Days campaign that we invite you to join forces wherever you are. Wherever this campaign is running, we have 16 days to commit, to make pledges, and to make the lives of women and girls safer. By coordinating Orange the World events and activities at global, regional, and local levels, we had yesterday here in Geneva a very compelling honoring ceremony for women, where many ambassadors, more than 100 partners, came to take their hat off for those supporting women and girls to be safer, to live lives that are free of violence, but also for survivors who have fought to create a world free of violence and gender-based inequalities. To participate actively and promote an online digital crowdfunding campaign, where we can share now a website to engage on that. Companies can adopt also and implement policies that have zero tolerance towards all forms of violence, that support survivors, and engage the media and opinion makers to explore innovative approaches to raise awareness about the urgent need for increased investments in inclusive, comprehensive, and long-term policies to prevent and respond to violence against women in public and private spaces, and to support your local women's organizations by finding ways to engage with them. What we have seen over the years of working consistently on ending violence against women is that we need a whole of society approach. This is not some work that some activists do on the side, but rather a whole of society commitment. We also have found that a strong women's movement, strong women's organizations connect quickly women to services, elevate the issue in the political agenda. And when we see the CEOs of companies around the world, the employees, all the people working in private sector saying we will not tolerate violence in this company, we make commitments and invest in the solution, this changes women's lives. So I encourage you all to take action these 16 days and every day to end violence against women and girls. to ask us any questions, because I know this we have a very interesting panel, and that we can come together next year to see what all of us have achieved. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Adriana. Really, really important points and very inspiring. So now we will continue on to hear from our panelists. But before I hand over to our speakers, we're also interested in your company's involvement in the crisis, what your company has taken steps to prevent violence and harassment. So we will launch the second poll now. So I hope that you can see this poll on your screens. Has your company taken steps to prevent or address violence and harassment? And then you have 4 options. Yes, we have measures in place. We are just starting to explore this topic. No, this is new to us, or I do not know. So I will let this run for a little while just so that we can see where we end up. And that is where I will end the poll and share the results with you. So this is actually very nice for us to see. Most of you have measures in place to prevent or address violence and harassment. And some of you are starting to explore this topic. For some, it's actually new, but it's only for very few. And some are not entirely sure. So if you're not sure, try to find out, look with your employer. And for those of you who are exploring or want to advance further, this is a great opportunity. So now I will introduce today's distinguished panelists. First up, we have Lisa Felton. She is the director of the Vodafone Foundation. She's leveraging technology and charitable giving to support vulnerable communities globally. She has over 20 years of experience as a lawyer and a policy expert, and Lisa has been instrumental in initiatives like Vodafone's 150 million COVID response and global internet safety programs. She's also a visiting policy fellow at the Oxford Institute, and she holds an MA in law from Oxford University. Then we have Alexandre Bourgaut. He is the Chief Digital Officer at Pomellato, which is a part of the Caring Group. He's a leader in digital transformation and sustainability. And Alexandre also drives Pomellato's efforts to integrate technical innovation with social responsibility. And under his leadership, Pomellato actively combats gender violence through awareness campaigns and financial support, setting an example of how luxury brands can create meaningful change. Then we have Nodar Andguladze. He is the development manager and player welfare director at the Georgian Rugby Union, and also a former Georgian national rugby team player, representing Georgia from 98 to 06. And beyond rugby, he's also an active Brazilian jiu-jitsu athlete, a key advocate for gender equality. Nodar collaborates with UN Women's Unite campaign to promote zero tolerance for violence against women. And his work includes engaging men and boys through rugby, and also championing initiatives like HeForShe to drive societal change. And following these presentations, we will have a roundtable discussion and also a Q&A where you can engage directly with our panelists and explore ways for the private sector to tackle violence against women. So I will now hand it over to Lisa from Vodafone.
Hi, thank you very much. And it's great to be here. A real honor to be able to present to everyone in this webinar. So if we go to the first slide, please. Next one. Brilliant, thank you. So the Vodafone Foundation has worked to address domestic abuse for over 15 years now, starting with technology solutions for those at the highest risk of violence, and now providing technology to connect over 2.8 million people affected by domestic violence and abuse and hate crime to support and education. This includes through our Bright Sky app, which is a safe, easy to use app and a website providing support and information on domestic abuse, Bright Skies is about supporting people who experience domestic abuse or who are worried about others experiencing domestic abuse, and provides different ways in which you can help. Off the back of this work, which, as I mentioned, has been going on for many years, the Foundation commissioned research in 2019, which shows the wide scale of the impact of domestic abuse. What this showed us was that over 80 million women across 107 countries were impacted. And the economic impact of this is over 1.6 billion lost each year due to reduced productivity, absences, and other losses arising from that abuse. We ran this research again in 2021 after the COVID or during the COVID crisis, which continued to show this impact, even getting worse in some cases. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this research, as I said, was run during the COVID crisis and showed that 1 in 3 workers have experienced domestic violence and abuse, and that this abuse took many forms. It wasn't just physical, it was also financial, but the actual majority of the abuse that was reported was psychological or emotional. This was obviously a huge issue during the COVID crisis because people were stuck in their homes, unable to really escape that, and the workplace support became even more critical. 72% of survivors said that their workplace provided them with a feeling of safety compared to home. So as a result of this, we were one of the first companies introducing a global policy on how to support survivors at work. If you go to the next slide, please. This policy includes recognition that domestic violence is a world of work issue, and we have a dedicated paid safe leave policy with provision of support. We also have safety and support measures in place for local workplaces through partnering with domestic violence organisations. For our HR and people managers, we offer training with regular communication and awareness, and subsequently have extended this to all colleagues through a network of allies against abuse. We have a strict confidentiality, non-discrimination, and non-retaliation policy against employees. The policy is in place not only to provide support, but to reduce the stigma, and in doing so, really enable survivors to come forward and to make sure that they're using the policy. And we have found that this has really worked. In many cases, survivors have come forward anonymously to share with others how much the policy has supported them. If you go to the next slide. We're expanding this survivor support, as I mentioned, by training colleagues beyond HR and managers to become our allies for survivors at work. Survivors can contact their manager, HR, or these allies for support. So far, we've trained over 150 allies, and by the end of this year, we will have trained over 250 allies. These allies are trained to recognise abuse, respond, and refer survivors to support. I'll talk you through how they do that and the benefits that that will bring. Next slide, please. We call this framework Recognise, Respond, and Refer. The first piece is all about recognising, and this is different whether you're in the office or you're remote hybrid working. In the office, we help the allies recognise the problem, for example, through unexplained reasons for absence, arriving late to work, changes in behaviour, or abusive emails or telephone calls. For remote workers, we look for work disruption from a partner, constant surveillance, attendance or distractions at online meetings, or refusal to allow the survivor to return to the office. Under the respond piece, it's effectively about using our policies and procedures. So we train our managers, provide information about workplace support, communicate this regularly, and have a named person in HR to give information to line managers. We also tailor this to adapt to office, hybrid, and remote working through paid safe leave, flexible working hours, change of work tasks, confidentiality and safety planning. And we find safe places and time to talk if someone is based at home or request a meeting in the office. And we can also provide support if a survivor moves into temporary accommodation. The final piece is refer. So we have an up-to-date list of domestic violence support services in all of our different, across our footprint. And we give information about Bright Sky and the other support apps. We partner with a domestic violence organisation for legal information support, emergency housing and counselling. Next slide, please. So in addition to our policy, the Vodafone Foundation has a portfolio of apps against abuse, supporting survivors. One of these is Bright Sky, available on the App Store or Google Play, and is live in 13 markets with over 1.2 million users now. If it's safe to do this, you can download this to learn more about the domestic violence and support and abuse support. It provides local information based on your location, advice, and also a safe place in which you can store information about what's happening to you, and also has a cover mode. The other area that we are involved in, next slide please, is raising awareness. So this should be, you should be able to press play on this one, whoever's controlling the slides. So you can see here one of our social media awareness campaigns. So I'll just let you read this. So they're very simple, very short, but they reach, the last campaign reached over 60 million women across 13 countries. And they are aimed to raise awareness of the problem, help people to take that first step and escape the abusive situation. Next slide, please. So the last slide is really just underlining the impact that this has for our employees. This was one of our employees and a survivor of domestic abuse who has spoken many times for us and has really appreciated the fact that the company allows this to be aired and provides the support that she needs to thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Very insightful. I will now hand over to Alexandre from Pomellato.
Thanks a lot, Maya, and thanks a lot, Lisa. I think before we go through like the description of what Pomellato is doing, I think there are a lot of things that have been rightly said by the different participants. And I think one of the biggest one is that it has to be a community commitment. Sorry for the the lot of C's, and also for individuals. So I encourage you to listen to like what all companies are doing, because even though it might look similar, at the end, if we don't do all the efforts towards our own small communities locally and more globally, we would not be able to spread the voice. The thing which is very dear to us is that actually, and Lisa mentioned it, the type of violence. Everybody thinks that there are only like homicides against women that can be classified as a violence, or like slapping a woman as a violence against women. But we have demonstrated there are a lot more type of violences, and there is actually like the very, the common violence, like the nasty jokes, the way of looking at women. We are speaking also currently about the financial violences within couples, and I think it's important for us to give weapons to and means of defense, surely to the woman, but also surely education to the perpetrators. I think there is no shame to say that actually most of the perpetrators are men, and we need to educate men surely on that. So what we are currently trying to do at Pomellato is actually trying to work towards those different ambitions that are, of course, fighting directly against the violence and like supporting women, and we will look at a couple of examples. But there's also the using our voice as a brand, a global brand known worldwide as part of Caring Group, to amplify the voice of ladies and women that are victims, giving ways of ending that, but also internally within our own team to educate our people, first to recognize and then also to avoid dramas. The first thing that we've been doing actually was to launch what we call Pomellato for Women. It's a communication platform that was launched about 7-8 years ago. We did the last event just a couple of weeks ago, where we used our global reach to raise awareness and to demonstrate how we can make changes in the various community. And we decided to do it as a very, very broad audience, but also in the different thema to be addressed. Surely, the objective is to fight against the violence, but not only to speak about it, to give like very constructive approach to identify why is it after so many years of discussion about like violence against women, why is it still like one of the #1 cause of drama in society or in couples. So we use really like our voice with our different stakeholders, surely our clients, but also our employees, the different partners and organizations with whom we are working, but using also, our abilities to raise the press, the celebrities, and so on. If you can go to the next slide, please. It's taking like multiple fold when we are talking about like raising awareness. The first one is before giving advices. I think there is a need to demonstrate that you on your own, you are actually leading by example. So giving advices, me as a boy today, I feel like a bit uncomfortable, and I had to speak with my colleagues, feminine colleagues that were telling me, Alex, please go for it, because regardless your gender, you can be a good advocate. Within Pomellato, 70% of our workforce is actually constituted by women. And we are not talking only about entry-level position. The executive committee of Pomellato is majoritarily woman-based. Recently, we have even increased, I think we are close to 70% again on women at the COMEX, and our CEO is a woman, and it's a topic #1, in business, is to make sure that we are supporting those kind of causes. Once we have demonstrated with numbers how it's critical and how we can do it internally, we have to also raise and push on our employees for two things: demonstrate why and how to recognize, the violence against women, how to respond. Recently, we asked a question to a very large panel, how to respond when you see one of your colleagues with like a brown eye. I believe most of you don't know. Should I approach her? Should I call the police? Should I go to HR? And it's really part of the things on which we have never been taught how to do, how to approach gently with the right with the right manner. So this is also the way that we want to raise awareness to our employees in order to respond, to show them that there are very simple things. Give me a sign, and I can be like just like a shoulder on which you can rely. More largely, every year we are raising this awareness with having a central event this year with more than 700 participants based in Milan, on which we had a very, very interesting panel, because we are bringing the director of the Tribunal of Milan. We're seeing like cases of murders against women like on daily basis, and the patterns are recurring. We have like also partnering with a shelter for women that are victims of violence. And we put like all those people together in order to amplify and to give, momentum towards this cause. And finally, of course, we are using our community awareness with various videos to promote and to put our stones to end the violence against women. If you don't mind, go to the next slide. Yeah, it was a little bit more details on the different activities that we've initiated with Teatro Manzoni. It's something that really is participating very largely to the recognition of these things. I think the objective for me is really to demonstrate that on the large scale we do have things. But I beg always my colleagues and the people that I'm meeting first to recognize that it's a problem. Violence against women have been not only a problem in the recent year, it has been always there. And until or unless everybody join forces, small individual, medium company, large company, we will still be there in a few years, still talking about that. If we don't take strong commitment, sharing the risk, I think we know all of them. Now it's time also to initiate changes, to initiate actions, and I'm very glad to see that in various countries. We were talking with Lisa in the UK. I'm based in Italy. We will have Nono soon from Georgia. I think it's very important that we say enough, basta in Italian. I think there is no need to continue arming our society with these things when we should speak about just love.
Thank you so much, Alexandre. Incredibly inspiring. We will now hand over to Nodar from the Georgian Rugby Union.
Hello again. It's a huge honor for me to be representing Georgia and the sport of rugby, which I dedicated my whole life to. And everybody always asks me, why did you guys join this campaign? And our answer is, why not? We joined because of this terrible statistics that we hear today, that every 10 minutes a female is there's a femicide in the world, and it's just shocking. And it became personal, actually, because I'm a father of 3. I have an older son and 2 daughters. So first of all, I would do everything to prevent any harm from my daughters. And more importantly, I want my son to grow up with the right values and for him to be a good citizen. So it was 2010 when UN Women, a good friend of mine, Irina Japaridze, approached me, and she let us know about this. We knew there was a problem, but we didn't know the scale of the problem. We heard the statistics, and as I said, there was no doubt that we were going to get in. Our whole rugby team, our national team, was honored and proud to be part of this campaign. And as you understand, our rugby is in Georgia and most probably all over the world is male-dominated sport. More males playing than women, and it's considered to be a high-contact, very brutal sport, but it is not. It's a saying that rugby is played by the gentlemen, and for us, violence is unacceptable. We have our own set of rules. We have a family values in the team, which we carry outside the team. And we were very happy to promote these messages of non-violence through rugby players who are high-profile players, who young kids look up to. They listen to every word they say. We dedicated international matches. We still are dedicating the international matches to raise awareness for gender-based violence. We use rugby players to speak with youth. We were trained for man-to-man talk, and we had over I believe, over 300 meetings in all over Georgia, in regions. Can you go to the next slide, please? I think yes, this is a rural area in Kakheti, I believe. And me and my very good friend Lexo Gugawa, who was also a national team player, we went there. We speak with small classes of 20, 30, and we try to promote this non-violent message to everybody that if you want to be a rugby player and if our guys are your idols, this is what we believe in. We believe in non-violence. We believe in family values. We believe in a strong team. So in every team which is successful, there is different sets of values, and violence is never part of it. So it was very easy for us to commit, and we also understand that it's not a game. There is no halftime. There is no full time. You fight, you get into this fight, you're there for the rest of your life, because you cannot say, okay, now I accept violence. No, it's going to be unacceptable for us always until we have a voice to raise in Georgia, until we have this platform of youth and many young kids who are our followers, and they admire us. We will always raise our voice and promote these messages. So we also held many international tournaments since we started the campaign in 2011, 2017, 2022. We had World Championship, Under 20 World Championship, Under 18 Championship, Europe. We brought all the teams together to sign a petition that violence is not acceptable for all the teams. And this picture you can see, can you go back, please? At this picture, the previous picture on the right, there's a famous Georgian UFC fighter, which you also got involved. He fights in UFC, Andguladze. He was also involved in this campaign before he moved to USA. And sport is a very good vehicle and tool to promote messages to youth, because our sportsmen and athletes, especially high-profile ones, are very much accepted, appreciated. They're big role models. So finding these champions is, I think, if we use sport as a tool, it's crucial for promoting such messages. And to take this further, can you go for the next slide where there's the one after? This is our national team. As you know, sponsorship on this chest is the most expensive space for the sports teams. For the sponsor to put the logo in. So we said no to sponsors when we were playing South Africa. This was just after the pandemic in 2021, or while pandemic. And this was the first time our team promoted UN Women logo on their shirts during a high quality international game. We played South Africa, which still is a world champion at the moment. And this was the highest voice we could raise to play against the world champion and put a UN Women logo on top of it. And we're very proud and we're very honored to be still part of this campaign. Last year, or this year actually, we placed together with UN Women sexual harassment prevention mechanisms within the Georgian Rugby Union. So there is safety at the workplace. Everybody's safe. Everybody's treated well, and we haven't had any cases before. Hopefully, we're not gonna have any in the future. But if there's something going on, we're gonna have a mechanism where the offender will be very much punished according to the whatever is in the mechanism. So The challenges, so we had a lot of challenges, of course. The society was they didn't understand, well, how come these rugby guys are now promoting this women's rights and what's going on there, and like what's happening. We even saw some billboards being harassed, and our boys being called like homophobic stuff. But it's always a battle against the current, and we are not afraid to swim against the current, and we will keep going until I know it's gonna be very loud if I say that we're gonna eliminate the problem. No, I don't think Georgia rugby is the problem, is the solution for eliminating problem, but we all have to involve as many people as possible, reach out to as much as possible, promote right messages to the youth, because that's and especially young men, because as Alexandre mentioned, the men are mostly the abusers, and we have to bring the community together. So for us, we have a very huge platform. We have around 15,000 players and around 500,000 followers on Facebook, Instagram, and our reach is quite high within Georgia. So we always promote positive messages through to our spectators. So it's terrible to hear again that this 10-minute interval. Well, we're still talking now. There might be, the statistics say that there might be somebody being attacked. So this is really, really terrible. And we have to keep going. We have to keep fighting. And I believe we have to get more males involved in this campaign, because male voice is heard, I believe, more than a female voice in this campaign, because as Alexandre said, we're the ones who are abusers, so we have to take responsibility for other men not to commit such stuff. I guess this is it. Yes, and this is we were promoting the empowerment of women through sports. This is during Rugby Europe Under-18 Championship, which was held in Georgia. You can see Andre, the Rugby Europe chairman from Holland, who was very happy to be part of this campaign. Behind there, you can see on the right female rugby players and Georgian national team players who are promoting messages of non-violence and zero tolerance towards gender-based violence. So we'll keep working on with this direction, and as I said, we will keep working until we have a huge fan base.
Thank you so much, Nodar. This is deeply inspirational, and it's so interesting to hear from all of our panelists from all of your different sectors how you're really making this transformational change. So thank you so much. So we will now transition to the roundtable discussion and the Q&A. So please submit your questions in the Q&A box, and we will address them shortly. So I will now hand over to Anna Felton, the Global Head of the WEP Secretariat at UN Women, to moderate this session.
Thank you so much, Maya, and thanks each and every one of you for your very, very insightful and inspiring remarks. I think the main message that you have given us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are, it's really, this is a responsibility for all of us. The private sector plays a very important role, and just to position it, it is the principle 3 of the WEPs principles that focus on women's safety, well-being, and health, where we position this work. But it also links very, very strongly to this campaign that we have, that you heard a lot about today. It is the 16 days of activism to end violence against women. It starts on the International Women's Day on the 25th of November, and it ends on 10 December on the International Human Rights Day. So these are 16 days. It's not the only days of the year that we are working on this. It is and something that we need to work on a daily basis. We've heard from our speakers so far that we all have a role to play, and whether you are a parent, maybe it's something to bring up at school at a very early age, you are an employer, you are a manager, you are just a peer in your company, you have a role to play, both to prevent but also to support the survivors of violence. I think a key message was also there's not just femicide, there's not only physical violence, there are many different forms of violence, including psychological, financial, and other forms of violence that we need to be at the lookout for. And indeed, it's Nodar, it's a tremendous figure that we have in front of us. Every 10 minutes, a woman is murdered by either her partner or family member. And we have now spent about 40 minutes, which means that there's already been 4 women that have become victims of this. So this is really an action that we need to all leave this session today. And for those that will be listening to a recording afterwards, an action that we need to bring with us. As we are taking the questions in the chat, there has been, I have one question myself in terms of data. Data came up many times, how important data is to inform our response and our action. What kind of data we're talking about? How can we collect it confidentially without exposing people that are giving the data? Or if you could give a little bit of some ideas on that. I think also some of you talked about mandatory training or capacity building for staff. How do you do that effectively? That it's not just something that tick a box and, oh, I've done the training, but something that really kind of brings about change and change in values and behavior in the workplace. As the questions are coming in, while it is something for each and every one of us to take action, is there any particular initiatives that people can join to kind of learn more about the tactics and what to do exactly, and how men can get involved in a more systematic manner, but particularly those that are the perpetrators? So how do we kind of involve them in kind of changing their mindsets as well? And a specific question to Nodar. If you have contacts with our other rugby national organizations that could help, channel your messages. And I think I'll stop there and take a round, and then we'll take the other questions as they come in. So maybe Nodar, will start with you.
Yes, as I said, there was 3 big tournaments where we got all the teams together to unite for this campaign. We had this big billboard where all the teams came in and signed the petition for non-violence. Also, Samoa and Tonga, we were over in Pacific tour. Georgia played Fiji, Samoa, Tonga in 2016. And I spoke with a UN Women representative in Samoa, Mele, and the game and on, I believe, the 25th of July 2016, there was a first international game played between Samoa and Tonga, and it was to raise awareness about this problem. So we are getting other teams involved. We have united under 20 championship top teams like England, New Zealand, France, South Africa, Australia, Samoa, Italy, Wales, Ireland, Scotland. So we had this one big event where we brought all the teams together. UN Women representatives spoke about the problem, and then all the teams joined the campaign. It was part of the legacy program for the Under 20 World Championship. And since then, we have every last, so the rugby has the international window, so which means in November, all the international teams play each other. So every game that we have at the end of November, which we had just now at the 24th of November against Tonga, we wear UN Women shirts. Which says Lelos is a nickname for Georgia Rugby, Lelos in support of UN Women. And the ball boys and all the supporting staff wear the shirt to highlight again the importance of this issue within Georgia Rugby. So once a year we celebrate, not celebrate, but we raise awareness at the international match. And then throughout the year we do small little educational campaigns with youth.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. And it's go beyond Georgia and the work that you do there to also have those conversations through your games across the world. I'll call on Lisa.
So just to answer the question around confidentiality in reporting, we have a very strict confidentiality, non-discrimination and non-retaliation policy built into our overall approach. But actually, what really makes a difference, I think, is that we've made various changes to try and change the culture to reduce the stigma about talking about domestic abuse, because that's what really enables survivors to come forward. And just to give an example of that, we've had town halls, talks, etc., from everyone from our chief executive down to HR managers, etc. And one of the talks by our chief executive, one person who was there listening to the talk said afterwards that was the moment when she realized she really had to leave her personal situation. She had to take action. So just hearing it from someone like that can make a huge difference and can start to really change the culture. We do also have speak up routes for people who want to be totally anonymous. So there are confidential, totally anonymous routes as well for people who are concerned to make reports and to also address issues. And in terms of helping other companies, we have been working as one of the founding partners of the Employers Initiative Against Domestic Abuse in the UK. And this is a fantastic organisation which anyone can join at no cost. And they have a huge amount of resources, including draft policies, handbooks for employees and employers. And I would really encourage everyone to have a look at what they are offering and to use some of that, because it's extremely useful. So we're always willing to sort of help other companies to do the same as we've done.
Thank you so much. And I think you are making the point also lead by example, which is very important that to remove that stigma. I'm putting also a resource here in the chat for everyone. We had a law firm helping us to draft a template of a violence and harassment work policy that can be useful for those organizations that don't yet have it. Based on our poll earlier, there are some that are about to get started or haven't started yet. So this is an opportunity to look at this language and see if you can use it. We'll go to Alexandre.
Yes, thanks a lot. I think for me, I agree with you. It's a lot on the reporting and how do we expand it, and like so many things that we can do. One thing that we did not touch too much, I think, is the reparation. How we can support, because we say no and Lisa, violence unfortunately will not end tomorrow. So we need also to have mechanism in place. Not only to teach, not only to identify, but also to repair. And so this is and to protect. And this is the reason why having shelters, providing support also to restart new life of women that have been victims. I think it's super important. And we've seen it a lot of time in Europe, actually. where we're based. Violence sometimes is brought also by with like the other factors that we know, immigration and so on, and generating the situation when we have victims of violence not speaking the language of European countries and not knowing how to, you know, navigate through our systems that sometimes truly provide support, that sometimes that are super complex. So it's also a way for us to, an objective for us to support those women, to support them towards this reborn of after the violence, providing them support, providing them also you know, help for all the paperwork. You mentioned just a few minutes ago, Anna, the support of lawyers. I think it's super important to have this kind of support. And then the second phase is really like the reconstruction. Speaking the language can be one of them. Getting to work can be one of them. Having a place, a shelter, a place where to live also is super important. And so this is also the reason why those are few items, few activities that we are conducting. And I think we should also continue rather than to make speeches, rather than to write only policies, also make small steps once at a time. And I'm glad to see that, you know, we're able to touch through sport fans, to luxury brands, to everybody is having a phone. And I believe maybe 60% or 50% of the people in the UK are using Vodafone. So amplifying, but also doing like concrete action, concrete activities. It's still better than to do like a small step today, rather than to make like a procedure, a policy that will be fixing everything, but only starting in 10 years. So I would say it's really about that, giving hope, giving progresses one step at a time.
Thank you so much. Adriana and Vera, would you like to come in?
Yeah, just to say how impressive the work that you have showcased today is, and how we need to bring those alliances with government so that we know that we are all aligned. I've seen some questions on the chat about engaging, for example, boys, and this is also a great opportunity for prevention, that where there are different types of programs, and it will need a real transformation in the educational system. But we are convinced that prevention is the key, so that we are not having to have so many cases that really are not that are preventable, and we can really not endure anymore. I think so that we need to integrate gender equality into overall educational system, into the work that the public sector is doing, as the big goal, because we know that this violence is the ultimate effect of discrimination against women and girls. So keeping that framework in mind, I think is very important. And I think that all the efforts that have been shared could be connected also with the work that we're doing here in Geneva, for example, to expand Convention 190 from the ILO on prevention of violence and sexual harassment in the workplace, another very important instrument where we need to be linking with the normative, the CEDAW committee and its recommendations. We have seen, for example, how a new recommendation, that's recommendation 40 that just came out on women's political participation and representation, can also have a very good effect in terms of the overall prevention initiatives. And in terms of the engagement of boys, we need to upscale what's already been done, and that has shown promising results.
Vera, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Anna. Following Adriana's intervention, I also think that it was very inspiring, all the good practices that have been shared in this webinar. Particularly, I also think that in the sector, in the sports sector, it has like a lot of potential to build a working environment that it's where positive masculinity is promoted, and also the sport values accompany the values to prevent gender-based violence. Just to finish, I would like to encourage all partners to join the campaign. So I will share in the chat the concept note and other materials, such as an album that our HQ has put together with a lot of activities, just to give them some ideas. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Vera and Adriana, for this. I think if all of us, actually, I forgot myself my orange scarf this morning, but this is a way to show our commitment to this. So I encourage all of you to use the material that Vera will share in the chat, and go with us, not only till the 10th of December when this campaign ends, but also to continue. There has been a few comments from the participants around the importance of education and how we can involve the education system in this campaign. And in some countries, we are engaging with them, but I think we are not fully there yet. Also, some suggestions about using job descriptions to emphasize that you are an employer that have zero tolerance, to include it in the code of conduct or employee handbook, where it's very clearly stated that your organization do not stand for violence and have zero tolerance. But I would like to end with one question to our panelists today. Based on your lessons learned from this work, what is the one recommendation that you have for participants? Either what you suggest that they do or that they don't do based on your lessons learned. Maybe you have learned something that don't do this, it doesn't work, or it's more harmful than beneficial, or anything that you could add. And we'll maybe start with Vera and Adriana, and then we go the other way around before we close.
Okay, thank you. So I'm looking at the comments, and it's so important also, gender-based violence in conflicts. It's something that we're working on in a very extensive way to make sure that there are protective mechanisms, to make sure that we have the correct information. And I know our country office has been working with women's organizations to have on-time data on what's the situation, same with Afghanistan, in so many regions of the world. And this is something that we need to keep in mind, because every time there is a conflict, a natural disaster, violence against women just intensifies, as we saw during COVID. But what I think is most important to say is that there's a lot of work and ideas around working with men that is so necessary, but it needs to be from a gender equality perspective. And so it's very tempting to go and do work with young men, with boys, but it really needs to be very clearly focused on work towards gender equality. And I think that's where we can lose ourselves. And we have seen evidence of some of the research that we have done in terms of that aggression not really going away. So we need to understand this complex ecosystem in which violence takes place. And what we have seen is that the participation of men in taking care of the children in the household decreases domestic violence substantially. So what we would like to see are policies to engage men in paternal leave, in ability to go and be with their spouse and their child when they are born. This dramatically shifts the notion of, for example, work that women are doing to take care of the household, of the children, being of a lesser value, and therefore inside thinking that violence can be justified. This really creates a bond that's different. And what we're seeing more and more is that men are asking for this opportunity and ability to connect with their children, with their family, with new roles, with new expectations. So what I would not do is to ever leave the framework of women's equal participation in decision-making, in the labor market, in anything, in any place where women are missing. They need to be there. Men need to support them in those goals. And definitely what I would do is to begin having the conversations on the engagement of men in childbearing and in household chores. As we have seen, the women are spending 3 times the amount of time on care work than men.
Thank you, Adriana, and thanks for linking the connections between our different WEPs principles, that they're all interconnected and not dealt with separately. Lisa.
Hi, thank you. So I would like to build on that because I completely agree with Adriana. It's a holistic approach that really makes a difference. And as an organization, we also have a very good parental leave policy for men as well as for women, for exactly that reason, to give those equal rights that drives equalities. And that drives in turn a real culture change that makes this kind of behavior unacceptable and starts that revolution. So for example, our Allies Against Abuse program is oversubscribed. And we've created a community of those people who have been trained. They're all listed on our website, all their names, and there's hundreds. It's fantastic and it's inspirational, and that's what helps people to take a step forward and to make those changes.
Thank you so much. Alexandre?
I would say for me, one of the key advice I will use would be the zero tolerance. We mentioned it before. There is like the normal violence against women, you know, the sexual joke at the coffee machine, by example, could be one of those. And us, if you know, in a company, we don't start, you know, saying like, look, it's not even funny, you know, it should not be, it's not appropriate at the work environment. I think this is where we can really start, because if we start not saying anything or leaving think that it's acceptable, you know, this is where, you know, along the way it will end with like further violence. So I think it's a very easy things to say. I'm sorry, this is not the place to do and to explain, you know, like it can be like perceived as violence. It can be perceived as not only not appropriate, but it can harm the feeling of the people surrounding us. So I think, again, with what I said before, better to do like small things, and small things can be as simple as saying like, no, please don't.
Thank you, Alexandre.
And
I
maybe,
think this is yes.
And maybe if you don't mind, I think one of the things that we haven't tackled, I think it's always believe the victims. I think we never said it enough, you know. Always believe the victim, because I don't believe that people would be reporting harms to their own person if it was not true. And our current society is having a little bit of difficulties to recognize that people of power could actually harm and be perpetrators of violence. Sorry for jumping again. Thanks a lot, Anna.
No. Thank you so much. And I think it's a great point that links to what I said earlier. We all have something to do, and it can even start with very small actions that can prevent any big incidences from happening. Nodar?
Yes, thank you. I agree with everybody, and especially with Adriana, that we have to work with young kids. And it's young men mostly, and it is what has worked well for us was to find people who deliver it in the right way. and people who they want to listen to. So for us, bringing these high-profile players, first engaging these players, we have to train them. We have to make sure that nothing inappropriate is said at the trainings, and then how they deliver. Because we don't, when we go into these seminars, we don't talk about violence right away. We talk about rugby, the rules, what's the values within the rugby, so forth, and how we take all these values that we learn within the team, how we take it outside, and how important it is, more important outside than within the team. So it's I think it will be specific to every country or every sport. You guys, if you are able to use sportsmen, I'm sure, especially with Vodafone, you are sponsoring a lot of sports teams, and I'm sure you'll find a lot of good champions and other companies as well. And that's it. I think we just need the right person to deliver, and a high-profile athlete. It worked really well for us.
Great. Thank you so much, Nodar. And we are 2 minutes over time, so I will quickly close and hand it over to Maya for the survey. But I would like just to thank each and every one. It's been a fantastic conversation, and also from our participants with a very insightful questions and comments and recommendations. And I think this is not the end of the conversation. It's also not the beginning, but we hope that we have been able to contribute to ideas for how you can take this area forward within your companies and in your communities. So thanks everyone so much, and back to you, Maya.
Thank you so much, Anna, and to all of our participants and to the speakers. It's been incredibly interesting, and I think we all learned something. And this is just as a final reminder, an evaluation survey will pop up once the webinar ends. So if you could please take a moment to provide your feedback, we will be very grateful. That would help us to improve our future content. And thank you so much. And we will see you in the next webinar.